Welcome to the Mama Making Podcast, a space for moms figuring it out in real time. This show is here to help you feel a little less alone in the mess and magic of motherhood. If that sounds like your kind of vibe, make sure to follow the show, share it with a friend, and keep showing up, exactly as you are. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mama Making Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, then welcome back. Today, I am so excited to have Madison Waggoner on the podcast. She is an Ayurvedic doctor, functional hormone specialist, and fertility educator who helps women continuously prepare for pregnancy by supporting their hormones, digestion, and emotional well-being. A mom of two, her work is deeply shaped by her own motherhood journey and her passion for helping women move into conception, clarity, and confidence. Thanks for joining me. I'm so excited to have you.
Yay, I'm so excited to be here with you today and just share a little bit more about me and my work.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about you, who you are, where you're from, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah. So my name's Madison. I am based in Denver, Colorado, and I practice Ayurvedic medicine. Like we talked about, a lot of people aren't really familiar with what Ayurveda is. A lot of people will see that or maybe like, what the heck is this word? And it's the traditional medicine from India. And I found Ayurveda through my own healing journey. So I'm 34 now at the time of this recording. And in my early 20s, I struggled with a lot of health issues, hormonal issues, like really bad skin issues. And my solutions were Accutane and birth control, which is pretty standard. So many women struggle with hormonal issues and like you're never really getting a root cause solution. It's, a Band-Aid. So I did the things that I was recommended. And yeah, it just Band-Aided it for a little bit. And then the things just kept coming back. I didn't have a period for many months. My acne came back. And then at that point, I was like, I want to take my health into my own hands. And that's when I learned about Ayurveda. And it's like, oh, I wasn't being mindful like what I could actually digest and, what was actually right for my body. I was like, oh, salads and smoothies are so healthy. Like, let me just pack the nutrition in, but it wasn't mindful about what I could actually like process in my body. And once I started to learn about Ayurveda and apply the principles in my life, my skin started to change. My hormones started to regulate. And I just felt so much better. And it's like, wow, I wish I'd found it sooner, but it was like, I learned about it when I was supposed to, and it completely transformed the trajectory of my life. I studied in college. I studied business management, entrepreneurship with a minor in nutrition. And it's kind of late in my college. I was like, I'm really interested in food as medicine. My parents were like, just graduate. Like I had taken business classes and didn't really take science classes. So I graduated and moved to Denver where I did yoga teacher training. And that's how I learned about Ayurveda. And it made so much sense to me. Like I say that it takes nutrition like 10 steps deeper. It's not just what are you eating it, or it's not just what you're eating, it's how are you eating it and when are you eating it. There's just a lot more like wisdom and how Ayurveda is based a lot around how nature works and understanding how your body works. And we have different body types, right? So what works for me might not work for you. And that's really, really important to understand that you are a unique individual and how can you support yourself in the healing journey. And yeah, so that was a big part of my story. And now this is what I do. And I'm so grateful to be able to do is to help support women understanding how to heal themselves, heal their hormones, and really get to the root of what's happening. So I focus a lot on like preconception and fertility support. And through my own lived experience of becoming mother, that I've been practicing Ayurvedic medicine for many years, and becoming a mother completely transformed my life and really informed the next stages of my work and really deepening into this preconception fertility. After the birth of our first son, I developed Bell's palsy, which is facial paralysis. And 2 days after, I could feel like something was wrong with my face. And I looked in the mirror, I was like, oh my gosh, like I knew from my studies, like what was happening. My face was becoming paralyzed and it was terrifying. Right. And at that point, like, I hadn't slept much in the few days post birth. And I was like, my options were like steroids and antiviral. And I was like, no way am I going to take a steroid. Like my nervous system is like already up here post birth. Like that's just going to, I'm not going to sleep more. So I opted out and I just, focused on using food as medicine and various, topical things that I could use. And, also acupuncture. I found someone who specializes in acupuncture for paralysis and was able to heal. So within 3 weeks, my face was night and day. I was like back to normal, which is just so profound. And, there was a lot that came up during motherhood, this like identity shift that I feel like people don't really prepare you for. I was, when I became mama, I was one of the first of my close friends to do it. It was also 2020, which was like such a difficult time to, undergo this really big shift when it's like the world as you know it is totally transforming. Like there's so much happening within that's transforming. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot to unpack, which we can talk about more, but weaving back into my story about how and why I'm doing this work. But the birth of our second son was also very transformative too. So, um, we had a somewhat complicated journey up to birth. I ended up birthing him, and then a few days later, he developed viral meningitis, and it was a near-death experience where we almost lost him. It was absolutely terrifying again, and he was in the NICU. He was kept alive with like a CPAP and feeding tube, and at that point, there was just so much processing and like so much surrender too, right? And I really teach that in working with clients and in the group programs that I teach, because there's so much, whether it be like in the fertility or like preconception time is like surrendering, there's mama's will, mama's soul, well, daddy's, whatever that looks like. And then the soul of baby. And what does that look like? And there's their own experiences. And right, for our son, there was a lot of his initiation into this world where I had to surrender and let go. And, it's like he had to have that desire to be here, right? Just as much as we wanted him here. And he's crushing it now. We're definitely worried for a while around like milestones and these kinds of things. Because, viral meningitis affects the meninges, right? The covering around the brain, and that can cause, potentially a lot of damage, but he's good. He's doing really well. And I feel like Ayurveda was a big piece of that, one for me so that I was at a place where I could, give him milk and, breast milk. It's like, there's nothing that Western medicine can do to help him. There was no antivirals or something, but it's like just his own innate wisdoms, like through the milk, right? The antibodies that can support his own healing journey. And, other things that are less tangible, but like playing mantra to help him heal and create this environment for healing. And, the desire, I whisper in his ear, Caden, mama needs you. Like your brother needs you. Daddy needs you. We need you here. And so that really helped me experience that, the surrender piece, and two, that there's more that meets the eye than just the physical aspect, right? And how this like spiritual piece is so important. So anyway, that's a very long-winded answer about, why I'm doing, but after that point, the near-death experience with our son, I really have been focused on preconception and fertility, because this is really when we can set the foundation for easeful conception, for good pregnancy, and, for a healthy baby. And we don't often think about that, but 50% of some stats say like nearly 50% of children struggle with chronic illness, right? So it's not necessarily just about getting pregnant. It's really about setting this foundation for the next generation, and yeah, really supporting that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. There's so many things that have just kind of boiled into one for you, it seems, to kind of put you on this path. I definitely identify with the surrendering of it all in motherhood and in pregnancy, and then early motherhood. My son was also in the NICU, and there's just this like out of body spiritual soul experience that you have of connecting with your baby from afar. And whether it's next to them in the NICU chair, or it's home when you're away from them, or whatever it might be, I definitely identify with that connection that's not necessarily physical. So I think there's definitely a connection between that like motherhood and medicine essence of things. And you totally nailed it on the head, what can look like, whether you have a typical story or something that's a little bit more complicated. There's kind of that motherhood and medicine overlap. What were some of the ways that you felt, obviously this experience, having your first baby and then your second baby, and in your 20s kind of recovering your body and feeling optimal? What was kind of the one thing that, if there was, that was like, I need to do this work and this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah. I think it's been a long thread, right? And then when I look back, I'm like, oh, it's like in college when it's like, I really wanted to study nutrition. It's like, well, it's kind of late, it's like just graduate and figure out what's next. And then Ayurveda kind of fell in my lap, and it's just, it's like, it kind of always met me where I was at and what I was seeking, and, what I was hoping for. I feel like I've always been interested in just the body's ability to heal and the power. I also, I used to be a hypochondriac where anything would set me over the edge. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Like something's really wrong with me. And Ayurveda really gave that power back to me to be like, no, there's actually things I can be doing to set myself up for success. It doesn't mean you can control everything. You can't, but there's a lot of things that you can control. And, and the power of the mind too is like just astronomical for healing. And I just feel like there was just so much that resonates. And I say, Ayurveda too has its own consciousness. Like when it's supposed to find you, it's like there's so much information out there and it's just so not known here in the United States. But it's the longest continually practiced medicine in this idea that like nature heals, right? We're using natural remedies to create wholeness. And really what we're doing is creating the space so the body can heal itself. Like, there's this desire to become whole and we create the environment for that to happen. Yeah. So there's just, so much. And then, just diving deeper into the well. And there's definitely been times of like questioning, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Like my grandfather was a cardiologist. I'm like, why didn't I just go to like medical school? But I think there's so many threads that are like, no, like this is really the work that I'm supposed to be doing. And it comes with its own challenges, especially when, like I mentioned, is like people are like, what is Ayurveda? There's a lot of explanation, but a lot of people come to me when they're not finding answers in allopathic medicine or, their solutions are like birth control or like here, supplement with this hormone. And people are like, no, I don't want to do that. Like I believe in my body's ability to heal and I need a framework. I need a way to do that.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect point to pivot and talk a little bit more about using food as medicine and also the emotional aspect that comes into feeling optimal and well. Do you want to get a little into briefly Ayurveda and food and digestion, all of that stuff?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Ayurveda, it literally translates to the knowledge of life. So the science or the knowledge of life. And it's mentioned earlier, it's a 5,000-year-old healing system. And it considers that mind, body, and spirit are connected, right? You can't separate them. And I think that's really important. Like, especially when we look at like mind and body, right? I just mentioned like healing is a lot of it comes from the mind. Yes, you've got to have the foundational pieces where you're nourishing yourself, you're sleeping. And especially with digestion, digestion is so key. And that's become way more popularized. And Ayurveda has been talking about digestion for thousands of years. When we look at it, it makes so much sense. Our bodies are only, our bodies and our minds are only what we can actually digest and like process, right? So if we're putting food in our body that's not actually breaking down, it turns into what we call ama or blockages. And I use the pipe example a lot. If there's, if the pipes clog, things aren't going to be flowing freely. And that's going to impact everything. It's like, let's say you're constipated. Like you don't feel good, right? A few days, like it feels terrible. And that's like that blocks and the holds. When we, you might get accustomed to that and you're like, oh, this is just normal. But ideally, no, we poop every day and, we eliminate and clear things out. But again, digestion is all. And so, that I always start there with digestion. I think one other fascinating piece of digestion is it's not just physical, but it's also, impressions or experiences that we've gone through, relating that back to my story. So after our son, we had the near-death experience with him, he was in the NICU, I immediately started therapy because I'm like, I know that this is a really big, this is a really big trauma and I need to process through it. If I don't, I'm like, it's going to get stuck in my field and that's going to impact my health. So, that's one example, but, looking at both and it's like, yeah, we really do feel well when our body is well cared for, right? We're sleeping well, we're eating well. We've got space to move our bodies, right? We're not feeling stressed. And, we also, our mind isn't, we're not feeling depressed or anxious, right? And kind of like, the opposites, like we're feeling calm and present. And like, that is in Ayurveda, like these things are all health, right? This is being toward.
Love that. Yeah, I think it's so important to mention that digesting your emotions as well is huge. Again, same kind of situation that I knew I needed to do a birth processing immediately, and still I came up for me in places that I didn't expect, and part of that was not totally addressing where my emotions were and the like you were saying, life experience has so much impact on you as well. So I think it's interesting to hear you talk about the intersection between the two of them.
Totally. And they're so connected, right? Like mind, body, spirit. Like if you've got a big presentation or something, like you feel that, like that's in your mind, but like your body will feel that. Maybe you're like, I'm not hungry. I don't have an appetite. Or, maybe you notice like, okay, I'm like getting diarrhea before I'm going, like, I'm so nervous, right? So things along these lines, like, of course, mind and body are connected. They're not disconnected. The other piece that I think can really help ground things for people is I give an example of a fire. So digestion is just like a fire. If you can understand how a fire works, you understand how digestion works. And this is one of the reasons why I love Ayurveda, because it makes things very simple. It's not, you don't need a medical degree to understand how your body functions. And right. And this is how the power this is how we can empower ourselves to take care of ourselves. So when we understand what's happening. But, I use the example of a fire. Let's say we get a bunch of logs and we start the fire and it's burning and we put a bunch of water on the fire. What happens to the fire? fire goes out, right? And, let's say we put like 10 times as many logs on the fire as is already there, the fire's going to smolder. In both of those examples, let's say you do like a juice cleanse or something. Well, your digestive fire goes out, or you eat a big meal and then try to go to bed. It just sits there, right? We've all had that experience where it's like, it's just too much. And, let's say that there's a bunch of wind and then that blows the fire out, right? Enough wind is good. It'll stoke it, as we know, but too much, it'll put it out. That's what's happening with with our digestive system. We want to get the fire really strong, put logs on the fire, right? Digest your food. It'll digest optimally, and then wait again until your digestive fire is strong. And many of us, we eat when we're not hungry. It's more of emotional eating, that emotional emotional desire versus like a physical desire. I know, that's a very practical thing that you can do is focus on when are you hungry? Eat when you're hungry, nourish yourself. And I used to snack. I had a lot of digestive issues too. Particularly, in my early 20s, I thought I was eating really well and I was, snacking, like eating healthy snacks, but like I couldn't actually digest it and break it down. And just by having a meal, waiting, having a meal, waiting, having a meal completely transformed so much for me. And, even instead of having a really big meal at night, having a bigger meal midday where you can actually digest it and break it down can transform everything for you.
Yeah. What are some other practical, simple ways that we can start to pay more attention to our digestion?
Yeah. So, just noticing like what feels good in your body and what doesn't, right? There's so many digestive disturbances now. And, it's hard because so many people are like, oh, I don't eat gluten or I don't eat dairy, but you're never actually addressing the root issue, which is the low fire. So that's what we want to support. Having cold things is going to inhibit digestion, right? So think about, you put cold water on the fire, it's the cold and the heat is, it's going to be hard for it. So having just sipping on hot water, warm water can completely transform, how you feel throughout the day, physically and mentally. Like I mentioned, eating when you're hungry, sitting also, how you're eating. So sit and have a meal, right? As moms, it can be hard where, you've got business, you've got kids, and how do you actually sit and nourish yourself? So I really focus on that. When I feed my kids, I sit and eat with them. And that helps me to make sure that I'm nourishing my body. And I'm not perfect, right? But I really try to make that something that I'm doing day in and day out to make sure that I'm getting food on a plate to nourish my body and my mind.
Yeah. If anybody is looking for ways to start focusing more on digestion, do you have any resources on Ayurveda that people can go to off the top of your head?
That's a really good question. For digestion specifically. That's a good. Banyan Botanicals is a really online. It's a really nice like online resource where they have a lot of information. In Ayurveda, we use the word Agni, A-N-G-I, A-N-G-I, Agni, A-G-N-I. That's the term for like digestive fire. But researching Agni, Banyan Botanicals has a lot of information, so you can start learning more about it. And I mentioned some practical things that you can do to support.
This episode of the Mama Making Podcast is sponsored by Collabs Creative. If you're a mom building a business and trying to do it without a roadmap, you're so not alone. That's exactly why I started Collabs Creative. To help founders like you tell your story, grow your brand, and actually connect with the people you're meant to serve. From social media strategy to full-on content creation, we do grassroots marketing that feels real, because it is. If you're ready to stop throwing things at the wall to see what sticks and start showing up like the founder you already are, head to collabscreative.com and let's start building something good. Now let's get on to the episode. Yeah, that's super helpful. So in terms of, we're going to talk a little bit more today about preparing for another baby. So you've already had one, maybe two. I think maybe talking specifically about choosing to have a second baby and what that looks like. What are some of the things Ayurvedically that people should pay attention to when you're like, I think I'm ready for number two?
Yeah. So, a big thing that I like to talk about is like preparing before you're ready, right? And, there is this process in Ayurveda, and I'll talk a little bit about functional hormone and Ayurveda, but, digestion is everything. So this process where we digest, and then we have 7 different tissues that are nourished based on what you can actually digest. And the tissues are anything from like blood, muscle tissue, bone tissue, fat tissue, our nervous system tissue, our bone marrow, and then reproductive tissue is the last tissue to be nourished. And I think that's really interesting, especially when you look at, there's a much higher prevalence now of digestive issues. And we also see, 1 in 5 women struggle with infertility. So you're asking, what can you do? Digestion first. And there's this step-by-step process in Ayurveda, but, digestion, clearing the pipes, clearing the channels, and then from there, deeply nourishing. Because, a lot of women will start focusing on like supplementation or, eating well and like moving their bodies, but that part is missed. You're only going to digest the supplements or, ideally food first always, but the food that you're eating and then supplementation as needed is only going to, move into your reproductive tissue, right? Your eggs, your uterine lining. Like in Ayurveda, there's the 4 different pieces of preparing for conception. And one is, soil. What are you going to plant? Imagine you're planting a garden. What are you going to plant it? You need some kind of soil, right? You've got to clear it out, make sure there's not like rocks or sticks in there, and then deeply nourish it so that it's ready. We think about like uterine lining, right? Tubes have to be clear in order for conception to happen. And then you think about seeds, like what do you hope to plant, right? And we're thinking about conception, we have egg and sperm, and it really is 50-50. And that's why I focus a lot on working with both partners, because it is, it's a 50-50 game. And we think about the nourishment, like I mentioned, it's like pre-nourishing the soil, and then, making sure that when we think about that, like our blood becomes the nourishment for our eggs. And, that process is egg maturation is like 3 to 4 months and sperm is like 2 to 3 months. So it's really important, again, that you're thinking about, setting this foundation. It takes time. In functional hormone science, we say that it takes a follicle we don't say that's like science says that it takes about a year for the follicle to develop, right? So whatever's happening in that year before trying to conceive is informing, how the follicle will grow and develop. And as we know, the follicle is what holds the egg and helps to, nourish the egg. Yeah, there's a lot baked in there. And then
Yeah.
timing. The last piece too that I'll mention is timing. It's like, when is the right time to plant your garden? Are you in a place in your life where you have the space, right? If you already have a baby and you're thinking about baby too, like what's happening in your nervous system, your body? Are you sleeping? Are you nourishing yourself? Right? These things are so key.
Yeah. What you've talked a bit about clearing the channels or blockages. How can people start to do that?
Yeah. So just like I mentioned with digestion, it really starts there, and paying attention to, um, w- you know, like I mentioned, having hot water, right? Eating when you're hungry, not eating when you're not. It's like, it's really connecting back to your, and, innate wisdom. In Ayurveda, we say that there's, a few ways that, disease or dis-ease can manifest. And, like not listening to your body, or you say make a mistake of the intellect. We all have this innate wisdom. And when we don't listen to it, that's what creates disconnection in the body and can create disease. And it's hard as mom, right? To focus on, I've got to take care of baby, but I also have to take care of myself. And I think especially in this planning process for, baby 2 or baby 3, yeah, how are you really connecting, clearing space for yourself to connect inward? Is that like going for a walk, being outside in nature, taking more time for yourself to reconnect with like what feels good in your body? What kind of foods do you want? A lot of times, especially with kids, it can be hard if you have picky eaters. It's like, that's all they'll eat. Like, I'm not going to make something else because why would I? This is extra work. I don't have the energy. But it's really important that you're tuning into like, what are the things that your body, what is your inner wisdom? What are you like deeply craving? Not like, ice cream or, hamburgers or something like that. Like, what is this deep nourishment that you're really craving on a physical, emotional level? And with partner too, that's a big piece.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the ways that you talk a little bit about guiding women to kind of fill back up before conceiving again and then creating space physically, emotionally, energetically? What does that all look like in practice?
Yeah. So what does that look like? I talked about nutrition or nourishment quite a bit, and that's really important. So, making sure that you are getting like in practice, like what do your meals look like? Are you eating protein rich meals? Are you getting enough fats in your meals, right? Carbs can be easier to come by, especially if you already have children and like kids love carbs. So making sure that you're getting enough of protein and fats in your, in your foods. In Ayurveda, we use the word ojas. Ojas is vitality and immunity. And there's specific foods that help to boost ojas. And those are, ghee. Ghee is clarified butter, which can be really helpful. Milk is um, a really fascinating food. A lot of people are like, I can't digest, and I can't digest dairy, I can't digest milk. And according to Ayurveda, milk is one of the substances that can nourish I mentioned the 7 tissues, but it can nourish all 7 tissues within 24 hours, which is pretty profound. So having like warm milk at night with spices is, very good for that, for this like building. And it's also very good for your nervous system. It will help you sleep, right? That's another big thing too, is making sure that you are resting in your body. Also, almonds are really good, dates, like fresh vegetables, freshly cooked vegetables. I didn't mention this earlier, but cooked food is going to be more easily digestible than raw foods. So that's really important on like, what can you most optimally like break down. Um, let's see here. Also, honey can be really beneficial, like the date nut bites, which most kids really love too. But making that or like finding a way where you can buy them. Those are all very good for like filling.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you think are different between trying for a baby and preparing consciously for a baby?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is, a few things. One is like timelines. And I think that there's something I call it the fertility pressure cooker. And I think it's hard because when you're in that try method, the pressure cooker can start, right? Where you're like, oh, this, I'm trying and it's not working. And that can really impact your nervous system, right? And when we look at foundational things for conception, nervous system impacts a lot of how your body's feeling, like is your body feeling safe and ready to support life, right? And that also when we look at the what's happening physiologically too, if our nervous system is fight, flight, or freeze, our blood is going to move to our extremities versus to the reproductive area. And that's really important, right? When we're in like rest, digest, and repair, blood flow is going to be, it looks at like how you digest, right? Your immune system, digestion goes up, immune system goes up, reproductive function goes up when we're in this rest, digest, and repair. So I think, that's a really important place, a really important consideration. And I think, a lot of it is timelines too. But I also think that it's hard because a lot of women are, I'm going to take a prenatal, I'm going to eat healthy, and then I'm going to start trying. But, what I really want to educate on is there's actually so much that you can be doing. And in Ayurveda, there's a lot of signs of like, hey, like, here's what I'm looking for. And these are the things that I'm seeing to show like, hey, I'm digesting well. I'm feeling really good. It's easy for me to wake up in the morning. Like I'm excited for the day. We feel this sense of like vitality, right? These are all very synonymous with fertility. And, the more that we can do beforehand to really before we're in that quote unquote like fertility pressure cooker situation to like set foundation, the better. Obviously, you can't always control things, right? We don't, we always have unexpected things pop up, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does, totally. I'd love to hear more about the clients that you work with and what kind of stories that they have come away with and whether it has resulted in pregnancy or not. But what are some of the I guess what I'm looking at or what I'm getting at is I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the information, but we're all about storytelling on this podcast and with a lot of the listeners that we have. I think that storytelling can be really transformational because it's just so relational. Do you have any stories of clients or even in your own experiences where you have started to implement some of these Ayurvedic practices and saw some really impactful benefits?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. Yes, I mean many stories. So, and I think it kind of ranges women who are like preparing or aren't trying yet to women who are trying and it's not going how they imagined it would go. But yeah, last year I worked with many different women who were preparing and they're really they've been focusing on their health for a long time and by working together being able to just connect more deeply, like really slow down and listen to themselves and understand like what is my body actually in need of right now. And I think there is a lot of information. I don't know if you're referring to the information I've shared or just like information out there, but there's such an overload of information out there. And I think what's really missing is connecting inward to be like, what is my body actually asking for? And that can be hard, in any healing journeys or, like no matter where you are in your life, like there's so much external noise that we often forget is like, what are our bodies trying to share? Anyway, so this client, she came to me and she, anyway, she'd been focusing on health for a long time and she joined one of my programs and it just really helped her connect more deeply. And they'd been trying for a few months and during the program she did conceive and the big part for her was like just really focusing inward and taking some intentional time to tune in and like see what her body needed. And I find a lot of times it's little tweaks or just little refinements that can really help and support. There's another story too. I had a client who joined one of my programs last year and she had a miscarriage and then conceived her first child and she was preparing for her second child. And she's a busy mom. She at that point was just starting a business too. And that was really demanding. And I think similarly, this helped her just get really clear about like Now, what is she doing when she wakes up in the morning? How is she caring for herself? She was having a lot of like frozen burritos, and she's like, this actually isn't supporting me. Like, let me focus on, preparing my food and making it in a way that it was accessible for her to really like nourish. When they conceived, they did conceive first try, which is really exciting. She had a really healthy pregnancy and healthy baby. But I think a lot of it's just like slowing down and bringing more consciousness and awareness to like, what am I doing versus like, let me try to do a million things at once and let me just slow down and get really quiet and try to hear what my body's really asking for.
Yeah, I love that. I think we forget how important it is to just like slow down and like you said, get clear on what our body needs or wants. And I think in that trying to conceive phase of things is so like, here are the time for here's my fertility window, here's my peak ovulation, I'm doing all the tests, and to get negative tests over and over is so challenging when you've put in so much mental stress into it. Not to mention, you've already got another kid, or you are like your client is building a business or whatever it looks like. I think that there's, like you said, that pressure cooker is so real and just builds and builds. It's no wonder that it takes longer on the second one statistically. But yeah, I definitely resonate with that personally as well.
Yeah. And I think it's harder, right? Because, if you have a business, you already have a baby, and it's like, where do you have that time to like slow down and really listen to what your body's needing? And it's hard because there's so much external noise and so much that pulls you away from finding moments. And it's like, how do you do that as a mom of one or two kids to like actually slow down? Really listen. And I find a lot of times our nervous systems, especially with small children, is like our nervous systems are already running up here, right? Because their needs is like we're constantly responding to whatever they need. And, having a business is the same thing. But like, what can you do? And I think it's very different for everyone, but what can you do to actually like, stick a knife in that and actually allow your nervous system to settle? Maybe that means like going on a trip or like actually just, creating space for yourself if that's possible. Or, throughout the day, like I mentioned earlier, like go for a walk. I think that there's so much in one, like when we have children, like we're constantly we're constantly going, thinking about what do they need? What am I going to feed them? What are they going to wear? Like, are they asleep? Or are they waking up? Like, there's just so much. It's like um, the monkey mind can just keep going. And how can you actually create that space for yourself? And again, being in nature, go for a hike, like be in nature, go sit by water, do something that connects you back to, one, like this moment, and being still and reminding ourselves of this, this bigger picture too. I think that's really important. Like that, the spirit piece. I find, if I stand on top of a mountain and just look out, I'm like, wow, like I'm so small, and, my problems can feel, instead of feeling so big, like they can take up so much mental capacity that we're reminded of where we came from. And that's what Ayurveda is a remembrance of, who we truly are and what we truly need. But yeah, I'm like, it's hard as parent and business owner to do these things.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful.
I think like movement's also really important, right? And going for walks, like that can be one of the best things for everybody in the family, in the family unit, is just get out and move your body. If you have time and space, love yoga. Yoga is so helpful for your nervous system and really allowing you to like come back into your body. But, any movement, right? Everyone's so different. And like what actually feels good and nourishing and fills your cup up. Do those things. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be, go to the gym and do a bunch of reps on this. Like go for a 10-minute walk. That will change your psyche.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think I've talked about it on the podcast before. When I was pregnant with my first, I had pubic symphysis dysfunction, and I thought we own a CrossFit gym, and I was expecting to be this like CrossFitting mom and super fit, and I wound up not being able to barely walk. So I started doing yoga again. I had done yoga prior, and it was just like exactly what I needed to help me like calm my body down, prepare for birth, prepare for postpartum. And it was like
I
you've
love
been
that.
saying on timelines, like exactly what you need when you need it. Yeah, and I think some of the fears that women hold a lot during this time frame can contribute to the mental noise. I think a lot of it is like, well, what if it takes longer on the second time? Or am I really how can I love another kid as much as I love my first? I think so much of this shows up for us, obviously mentally, but it has to show up for us physically as well?
Yeah, I mean, these are such good questions. I think, to address one, can I love someone else the way that I love my child? Like, can my heart expand? And I think that's a really important principle to remember that, like, we are love. Love is infinite. And yes, you can. Like, your heart doesn't, it's not like your heart gets cut in half. It's like your heart grows, your heart just expands. And it just, if you have all the friends, right? And you love them in different ways. There's ways that we can just expand. And I think, speaking to fears, a big thing to do is one, instead of when fears come up, we can suppress them, right? It's like, that's not there. Oh no, I don't actually feel that way. And that really does a disservice, right? Of talking about the digestion piece. If you're not actually like, welcome it to the table, get curious. It's like, where is that fear coming from? What is it trying to protect me from? And how can I really honor it instead of pretend that it's not there or, yeah, just hide it away. So I think that that's really important to process and sit with it. And like I said, get really curious about, what is it trying to share? What is its message? And, of course, just sharing on our experience, from the second is like, I didn't imagine everything that would happen with his birth to happen, but I do believe that life happens for us, right? And if that experience didn't happen for me, I don't think I would be doing this work, and especially not with the passion that I'm doing it now. And we are strong enough to navigate what comes up, right? And I think if it's like some of it is surrender too, is just allowing things to unfold, is creating the best foundation that we can and allowing things to unfold. And I feel like there's this really, it's like a knife edge of doing what we can do and then letting go. Right. And I think with Ayurveda, what I find really helpful is that and especially in like the preconception or fertility space, there's just like, and especially like women's health, there's so much like disempowerment that like, doctor knows better than we do. Doctor knows better than our body. And I feel like that does a lot of disservice to women. And I think especially, those who are like business owners and who are preparing for baby, it's like connecting to that intuition is so important. But again, we've got to slow down in order to do that. And also just this belief that like, yes, I can do it. Like, what's the mindset? What are those words that we're repeating? Our bodies hear that. And it's actually really fascinating. There's more research, especially around like, time bound, and women are starting families later. Right. And I think that's really important to consider. When you look at timelines, but right now I'm supporting women in her early 50s to conceive. And like, it's possible, right? If you can, if you're menstruating, it is possible to get pregnant. And there's things that you can be doing to, like the ojas, like I talked about earlier, to build vitality and immunity and to support cervical mucus and to support egg quality and all of these things. And I feel like that's, there's just a lot that you can be doing. Mindset is just so key. Like I was going to give the example. There is research now that shows, especially as women age, there's actually a lot more around the nervous system and how the ovaries respond to your nervous system. And I think that's really fascinating and how that relates a lot to, hormone production, right? Ovaries produce estrogen and progesterone. And, how our thoughts and our experiences form a lot of what's happening to our nervous system.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea that like anything's possible and utilizing our mental space positively and kind of reframing the thoughts and feelings that are coming in to be more positive and contributing to this like overall balance. So in rounding out our episode, we talked about a couple simple ways that people could start to implement some Ayurvedic work into their daily lives. But I would like to talk about any like daily rhythms or rituals that people can start to implement to get a little more clear.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add from the conversation we just had, I saw this once on Instagram, but it's like, what if everything did work out? Right. So often we're concerned about things not working out and the fears and the worries that come up. And it's like, that is such a good reframe. Like, what if everything did work out? What if everything worked out perfectly just how it was supposed to? And that can change a lot. But
Yeah, I love that.
yeah. What kinds of things can you be doing? So, one thing is like, what are the things that you're already doing and how can you be more conscious in doing them? Instead of adding more things to do throughout the day, it's like you're already eating. How can you sit down and actually chew your food when you're eating? How can you notice what your food tastes like or smells like? Right? You're already doing those things. So, how are you brushing your teeth? right? I can get into the mode where I'm like, like brushing so hard. I got to do this quickly. And it's like, what does it actually feel like to brush your teeth and to notice, to like be in it, right? That's bringing the consciousness to the things that you're already doing. And this is like the mindfulness piece, right? You can go about your morning routine and not even think about what you're actually doing, but it's like, how do we bring the mind to the present moment? And that can shift a lot. Let's see here. Other ways, other things is prioritizing sleep, right? After you put kids down, go to sleep. Don't get on your phone. Don't do more work. Just go to sleep and really take care of yourself. We talked about the digestion a little bit too. So I'll just reiterate those things. But eat more cooked foods. Focus on sipping on hot water to really support your digestive system. And going for walks. Make it a point to like go for a walk, 10-minute walk, 5-minute walk every day.
I think those are all really great practical ways that we can start to really focus and hone in on what our body is telling us.
Yeah. And I can't, I think just the foundations, right? That's so important. Oftentimes, when we're searching for so many things outside of us, it's like it's listening inward and just focusing on the foundations. Those really help to move the needle the most.
Great. Thank you so much for being on. This was amazing. Is there anything else that you want to share about Ayurvedic work, preparing for another baby, anything in your world?
Yeah. I think we've gone through a lot. Nothing that
Okay.
comes to mind. But yeah, no, thank you for allowing me to share and to educate too. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, tell people where they can find you, website, social media, and then any offers or things you might have coming up.
Yeah. So my business is Shri Wellness and my website is Shri Wellness, SHRI wellness.com. And I'm also on social media, same thing at Shri Wellness. I'm on Facebook too, although I'm not as active on Facebook, but more on Instagram. And then I do have a fertility type test where you can learn more. So we talked about different body types where you can learn more about your body type and different foods that can really support, your unique body and your healing journey. And I do have, I work with clients one-on-one. I also mentioned that I do programs where I teach a lot of these skills and support in community for women who are preparing for pregnancy, whether you're currently trying and it's not going as planned, or if you are, hoping to conceive in 6 months, 3 months, 12 months, whatever that looks like. Yeah. So, the best way to learn more is just to go to my website and we can set up a discovery call to talk more and see what might be a good fit.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was such a fun conversation, and I will definitely be doing an Ayurvedic deep dive and see where I can add some lightness and clarity in my life as well.
Yay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having this incredible podcast too.
That's it for today's episode of the Mama Making Podcast. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with a friend, leave a review, or follow us on social media. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.